Alright, welcome back to the channel everyone. As you would have seen from the thumbnail, we have the brand new MITA Motorsports Countersunk shift knob right here. We're going to be comparing it with other shift knobs that I just happen to have on hand. This video is going to be very subjective. The only objective part of the video is going to be where I weigh the shift knobs and do a few measurements. Other than that, I'm going to comment on, feel of it, color, texture, quality, all that kind of stuff, what I personally like in a shift knob. So sit back and enjoy the video. All right, everyone, as mentioned, this is the MITA Motorsports Countersunk shift knob. It's called the Countersunk shift knob because it is countersunk inside. As you can see, the threaded area is reset into the knob starts about right here. So that way it can sit low on your shifter stock. It is very similar to these two knobs right here. This is the OEM Type S knob. It is not countersunk, as you can see, threads all the way to the end. Whereas this other knob is also a MITA Motorsports knob. It's their original countersunk knob, as you can see there. But it's lighter weight than the new one, and it's a different shade of silver. You can see right there. These three should be very similar in shape and design, just different in weights and color and everything like that. I have other shift knobs here as well. I have the MITA Motorsports 93R, I believe, shift knob, and this is a replica of the NA1 Type R shift knob, only available in Japan as right-hand drive model, available because it's a male threaded knob meant to work with the Type R shifter, which MITA Motorsports made a left-hand drive version for. So they remade the knob and made a left-hand version of the shifter. I have videos for both of those, the knob and the shifter, on my channel. Go check those out. This is a very nice weight shift knob as well. And I just happen to have a spoon Duracon knob and an OEM DC5 base model 5-speed knob right here. So why do I have these in this video? A lot of you are familiar with these knobs. These knobs have been around for a long time. You may not be familiar with the offerings from MITA Motorsports. And so I wanted to get these comparisons out there for you just so you can have a better idea of what you're getting into with MITA Motorsports knobs, just in case there's no one around you where you can try it or anything similar like that. So let's go ahead and get into the objective part of this video, which is weights and dimensions and things like that. Okay, let's start with the lightest shift knob, which is the spoon Duracon knob. This one comes in at 59 grams roughly. It's about 65-ish millimeters. Next lightest is the DC5 base model knob, coming in at 150 grams. This one is about 2¼ inches or so, roughly, and roughly 60 millimeters in length. Next is the original MITA Motorsports Countersunk shift knob, coming in at 168 grams. This one is coming in at about 95 to 100 millimeters, or close to 4 inches in length. Next is the OEM Type S / Zanardi shift knob, coming in at 269 grams. A little bit shorter than the MITA's, so it's about 3¼ inches or so, or 95-ish. Yeah, it's about the same, 95 to 100 millimeters long. Next is the MITA Motorsports 93R knob, coming in at 294 grams. So overall length is roughly 95 millimeters, almost 4 inches, but that's with the threading. So without just the shift knob portion that sticks up above the shifter, it's about 3¼ inches, or roughly 80 millimeters. Last but not least is the brand new MITA Motorsports Countersunk shift knob, coming in at a massive 491 grams. Give or take a gram or two. And the MITA Countersunk shift knob is coming in at about 98 millimeters long. All right, we're going to measure the diameters of these 3 shift knobs right now. We're only going to measure the diameter of the MITA NE1R shift knob, the OEM Type S knob in the middle, and the new MITA Countersunk knob on the right. I'm not sure if I mentioned it so far in this video, but the new MITA Countersunk knob does feel a little bit girthier in your hands than the OEM Type S. So I want to measure that and see if that is true. That's probably what's also contributing to a little bit of the weight that they put into this knob. So first, here is the NE1R knob, and my caliper is not the greatest, so take these as estimates. You can see that, but let's go. So this is about 33.98, so about 34 millimeters. The OEM Type S / Zanardi knob is about 40.3, 40.4, 40.3. And let's measure the MITA Countersunk knob. So average, I'm gonna say, is about 41.6. So it is a little bit larger than the OEM Type S knob. And you can probably slightly see it in my hands right here. Has a slight different profile. It looks like a little bit of the weight is down in this area as well. This side is a little bit more slender here. So around it looks like they probably just added a little bit more diameter around this main portion of the knob. All right, next up we're gonna get into a little bit of the design of each one, measurements and everything like that. The spoon Duracon knob, if you're not familiar with this one, is a Duracon material, which means it's a little bit plasticky. That's why it's so light. The reason why I have these two along with a DC5 base model knob is because not only because I had them on hand, but because just gives you something else to compare to. The spoon Duracon knob feels very similar to something like a narrower version of this, mixed almost like a DC5 knob mixed with this 93R knob. The 93R knob is probably a similar diameter to the spoon knob. However, it has the weight and has an extra length. So spoon Duracon knob is a very lightweight knob. Lightweight versus heavyweight is a very subjective thing. Most people tend to like heavier knobs because it creates like a smoother shifting feel. But it's really up to you. I've used both kinds of knobs, lightweight and heavyweight, and I like them both. It just depends on what personal mood I'm in. But again, most people like heavier weight knobs, which is why you don't see too many lightweight knobs like this. So personally, and here's where my opinion comes in on all these, I personally really like the Type S style knob. It's a knob that I first purchased before any other knob for the NSX because I am a big fan of this style knob. Honda has used this knob on many cars, S2000 included, and this size just fits my hand nicely. Spoon Duracon knob again is very similar in size, just slightly different, obviously, in less of an egg shape, more of a cylinder shape. So where this one comes in, where the Type S style knobs come in, is that, as you can see, the top of the knob is essentially like this egg style Honda knob, but it just has a longer length. And why I like that is because while I do like using these knobs, my pinky ends up contacting the lock nut on the bottom, and that's sometimes not very comfy. So this is kind of like the best of both worlds, right? It has that feeling up top, but then it has a little shoulder on the bottom where your hands and fingers aren't going to be contacting any kind of lock nut. The downside is obviously you need the length for your shifter needs to have that length to fit this kind of shift knob. Whereas, if there's like a bend right after the threaded part, then you're going to need some kind of knob like this. But we're talking NSXs here, so NSXs obviously all fit this type of knob. So I'm really big fan of this knob, and I really like the weight of it too. As you saw in the weight section, this comes in probably like close to double the next closest one. I can't remember what it is. I'll put it on the screen right now. But that's going to feel pretty nice when shifting. I'm going to go and drive it a little bit after this and give you guys update on how it feels. but for me, again, this just feels perfect. The 93R knob is also nice as well. I did a full review video on that. It is a little bit on the smaller side, as you can see here. This just fits the bill perfectly for me. And of course, it being countersunk, it does sit a little bit lower than the OEM, which is not countersunk. Texture-wise, the feel's identical. They're both very smooth finish. The two MITA Motorsports knobs, I'm not sure about this one, but this one is advertised as titanium. So on their website, they advertise it as TI316L titanium. You know, it has a very premium feel. As you can see, it's machined very nicely. There's no complaints anywhere. You know, you can't really go wrong with a shift knob and it being machined. So, you know, you can see the quality that the 93R knob has as well. Okay, I have the MITA Countersunk shift knob in place now, and just a note to note, I am using the MITA short shifter that I reviewed in a different video with the male threaded adapter piece. So I'm going to thread it all the way down until it stops, just to see how low it goes and where it stops, because again, this is a countersunk shift knob. Okay. So it does sit pretty low. I will throw in a comparison shot of how the OEM Zanardi shift knob sits. The OEM Zanardi shift knob is not countersunk, so it does sit a lot higher. This being countersunk, the shoulder of the actual shifter itself is sitting inside the shifter currently. So now the shift knob is bottoming out onto the shifter, and that's about as far as it goes. So I'm going to pull the shift boot up a little bit, and it sits in a nice position. A little bit lower again than Zanardi, and the weight feels excellent. So very, very positive engagement with the MITA shifter and of course this heavyweight shift knob. And it feels very good in the movements. So let's go take it for a spin. Alright, there's not much that needs to be said about a shift knob. You know, they are very subjective, right? Basically the size, the feel, everything that one would like or dislike about it is up to the driver, right? It's very subjective. So, in my opinion, the knob feels good. It does feel ever so slightly larger than a Type S, OEM Type S knob, OEM Zanardi knob. So for some people, that would be a good thing, right? Before I mentioned that if you watch my video on MITA's male threaded knob for their shifter, that knob is very small and very slender. So this knob is basically the opposite. And if you have a very large hand, you will probably really love this. This shift knob is not too big for my hand, but I can tell that, you know, it'll probably feel good for people with even larger hands than mine as well. As far as feel, it feels perfectly fine. The caveat to this shift knob on this shifter, this is a MITA short shift kit shifter, and it's actually not quite meant for this shifter. Because this knob is countersunk. So that's again one of the bigger differences between the OEM and this knob, besides a slightly larger and heavier weight, slightly larger diameter and heavier weight, is that it's countersunk. So it will sit lower, and MITA advises that it's not exactly meant for their shifter. It's meant for a standard shifter, because I'll show you guys later when I get back into the garage, but the shift knob ends up hitting the shoulder of the shifter, and it doesn't end up bottoming out on the threads. So I'll explain that again later when we get in the garage. But the feeling of this knob is very good. So again, unless you're using the MITA shifter, yours is not going to sit as low as this, but it will sit low on a stock shifter because it is countersunk. So just be warned that yours may not sit this low. So overall, I would say that, you know, if you're liking the tinier shift knobs, go with the MITA NA1 Type R style male threaded shift knob for the MITA shifter, of course, if you have the MITA shifter. If you want, you know, the OEM size, of course, is Type S, but if you want slightly larger and probably the heaviest knob you'll get, one of the heaviest knobs you'll get for the NSX, you want to do this new MITA Countersunk shift knob. Of course, with the MITA shifter, you'll need the threaded adapter, but once again, it's not necessarily recommended for that. This is great for OEM US shifter or the OEM Type S shifter. It'll sit a little bit lower for you. It'll have a nice weight and have a nice size for your hand. And so to give you an idea of what I was talking about earlier on my test drive, the MITA Countersunk shift knob on the MITA shifter, you can see here there's a line right here. There's a wear marking because that's where the MITA shifter shift knob bottoms out on the shifter, basically right where it starts to kink. And so I think that's probably why MITA suggests that the countersunk shift knob is not necessarily good for their shifter. I believe that knob would work best with the OEM shifter, OEM Type S shifter, where the shift lever is actually more straight and it can take advantage of the countersunk part of the knob and sit as low as possible. So for this, you know, if you saw that the OEM Type S knob is not countersunk, so it would stop essentially right where the threads stop. And so the MITA countersunk knob sits that much lower, probably about a good inch lower. So, you know, it's something to think about. If you don't mind that wearing, that shift knob bottoming out on the shifter, and you just want like the lowest shift knob possible, probably the MITA shifter with their countersunk knob is probably the best way to go. But I'm not sure what the long-term effects of it wearing on this are. Like, you know, if the knob is bottoming out on this part of the shifter, is it gonna wear out and get loose every once in a while? You know, because if it's not bottoming out, typically knobs bottom out the threads on these threads on the inside of the shift knob. So if the knob is just bottoming out on the shifter, it's possible that it could, you know, come loose over time. So that remains to be seen. So all in all, I think it's a really great knob, really good option for those of you that want a countersunk option for the knob to sit lower, especially if you're not using a MITA short shifter kit, and you want this to bring the knob down, but you do like the feel and look of a Type S style knob. This is, again, slightly larger in diameter and heavier for sure, but I think most people like a heavier knob. So yeah, I think overall a great option for all of us NSX owners. So once again, thank you to MITA Motorsports for supporting us, for supporting my channel, for continuously creating and innovating and bringing new products to the NSX community. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.